Time now for Focus, and in today's edition we look at French government proposals to try and boost patriotism and social cohesion in the wake of last year's terrorist attacks in Paris. President Hollande wants to counter radicalisation by spotting young people on the fringes of society and helping them to love their homeland. At the moment, however, the only obligatory measure is a one-day training course called the Day of Defence and Citizenship. Critics say it's a waste of time and money. France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent and Alex Le Bourdon went to find out more.
8:30, arrivals 8:45.
These French teenagers aren't used to military drills and discipline, but that's what they're getting today. They have to spend 9 hours on a military site for France's obligatory Day of Defence and Citizenship, which replaced military service. What are you expecting from today?
Nothing special, really. I don't know.
There's not much enthusiasm on show. All French teenagers have to attend by law. You need the certificate to pass your driving licence and take some public exams. Most of the day involves sitting in a classroom, although the teacher is a little different to usual.
Let me introduce myself. I'm from the Parachute Regiment. First of all, let's watch a little film.
The day vaunts the basic principles of France's defence and civic values.
Depuis plus de 50 ans, l'armée française est intervenue à de nombreuses reprises.
Okay, wake up, those of you who are asleep.
We've already learned this in school, so it wasn't very useful.
Although some are sceptical, French President François Hollande has proposed prolonging this scheme to last up to a week.
5 days would be a bit long. Saying all this in 1 day isn't bad. 5 days would be a bit long for young people like us.
It might not seem useful to all, but there is another purpose to this day. In the next classroom, a French literacy test is underway to identify young people with reading problems.
À quelle heure peut-on voir le film Noir Destin? 13h30.
The results are analysed immediately. Anyone who raises concerns is quickly taken aside.
I've come to collect someone from table 18.
This young man is 19 years old and left school with no qualifications. Today, this interview will outline his options.
Donc, avez-vous entendu parler maintenant du service militaire volontaire? Un peu là. D'accord. Qu'est-ce que vous faites de vos journées? Je traîne. Vous traînez? C'est pas bon? Ouais. Vous voulez pas, peut-être pas reprendre les études?
Ouais, c'est ça qu'ils veulent me faire faire, mais moi j'aime pas trop les études.
Vous voulez pas rentrer dans l'armée? L'armée? Vous savez pas?
For the staff here, this social aspect of the day is essential, especially since the end of France's military service.
We used to have farmers' sons and judges' sons all together. Now there's no more military service. It's up to us to bring that social mix together. We show them that they're not alone.
France's history of military service dates back to the French Revolution, with young men called up to defend the new republic. It was finally suspended in 1997 and replaced with the current day of service. These French lawmakers are calling for it to be scrapped and replaced with a voluntary cadet system for young people in their spare time.
It's too short to really engage them on the importance of defence. This Day of Defence and Citizenship has disappointed young people and costs more than 100 million euros a year.
We prefer the proposal of a youth movement, like what they have in Canada, the cadets, and get young people aged 12 to 18 involved.
Another way of engaging young people long-term, France's civic service, up to a year spent with a charity or local authority. A scheme President Hollande wants to massively increase.
Il date de quand, le château? De quelle époque?
Du Moyen-Âge.
Le Moyen-Âge. Le château, il a été construit.
Since October, Chloe's been helping school groups learn about historical monuments, a public service for which she's paid around €500 a month. But it's also a chance to boost her CV. Chloe hopes to find work in the heritage sector now that she's finished her studies.
I didn't want to be on unemployment benefits for several months, struggling to find work. So I chose to do civic service to get more experience and find a job more easily.
Maverick's reasons for choosing civic service are not exactly the same. He's come through difficulties to leave school with his diploma, but has no idea what to do next. Working with the Red Cross has given him a sense of purpose.
Without this civic service, I don't know what I would have done. It really helps me feel useful. When I'm out doing first aid training, I help people, and that makes me feel good.
After 3 months of service, it's time to assess Maverick's progress.
Try and learn from your predecessors from last year.
So far, the outcome is overwhelmingly positive. His mentor believes this experience can really change lives.
For those who've come off the rails, this is a real helping hand that's being given to them to get back on their feet and get on the right path.
Getting on the right path, helping young people avoid isolation, unemployment, or even radicalisation. The reasons why the French president wants to boost these youth schemes.
For more on this, I'm joined from London by Marco Perolini, who's a researcher at Amnesty International and author of a report on the state of emergency declared here in France in the wake of November's attacks on Paris. Thanks for talking to us. First of all, there we saw military service, citizenship classes, civic service. Are any of these going to be of any use?
Yes, I think we should really think about the aim of all these initiatives. I mean, of course, these initiatives can be useful per se, but actually what we really have to focus on somehow is discrimination faced by young people, including young Muslims in France, both at school and also in employment. We need to, so I think French authorities should really also focus on structural issues that have prevented young people to access employment or to complete education nowadays.
How concretely do you do that? I mean, France has tough laws, as do many countries, against discrimination. It may remain a reality on the ground. How concretely do you attack it?
Well, France has a strong anti-discrimination legislation, but unfortunately this legislation is not always implemented strongly on the ground. And in fact, Amnesty International published in 2013 a report documented discrimination, especially faced by young Muslim women who cannot find an employment because they wear their headscarves. And nowadays it is still the same situation. It's very, very difficult for Muslim women, especially, but also for Muslim men to find an employment if they wear, for example, religious symbols or religious dress.
I'd like to move on more generally now to your opinion of the response of France to the terrorist attacks, particularly the state of emergency. That's something you're very concerned about.
Yes, we are very concerned about the implementation of the emergency measures, and in fact we conducted a research in December and January this year, and we concluded that the counter-emergency measures have a disproportionate impact on human rights, on fundamental rights such as the right to privacy, the right to freedom of movement, but also the right to employment. We published our conclusion last week, and we are very concerned that the government and the parliament are in fact extending the current state of emergency without having provided very strong elements relating to the necessity of the current emergency measures in order to counteract what they describe as a public emergency linked to terrorist threats.
Is it not normal that a government would go for the security option, the take no chances option, when there clearly is a threat of terrorism? I mean, it's happened.
Yes, I mean, of course, it's absolutely understandable that measures have to be put in place in order to counteract further attacks and to prevent further attacks. And in fact, that's why Amnesty International did not, for example, criticize the fact that the government declared a state of emergency straight after the Paris attacks. But at the moment, the problem is about how these measures are implemented and the impact that these measures have on the human rights of those who are targeted. If you look at the grounds on which these measures are, for example, adopted, these are very vague grounds. and many people are in fact targeted mostly because of their religious practice, which point to potential discriminatory implementation of these measures.
These measures do, however, have the support of a lot of the French politicians and the vast majority of the French public who perhaps don't really feel they're affected by it. Their attitude seems to be let the police get on with their work.
Well, of course, these measures, yes, they may be supported by the public, but it is not, of course, this is not a reason for the government to extend the current state of emergency. I mean, it's a responsibility, it's a government's responsibility to communicate very specific information about the current threats that France is still facing and about how to deal with those threats. So the information available to the government should be openly communicated to public opinion, and also the government should be critical about, for example, measures that have been taken straight after the Paris attacks, but whose necessity is nowadays questionable.
Marco Perolino from Amnesty International, thanks very much for joining us. That's it for Focus. You're watching live from Paris here on France 24. I'll be back with the headlines very shortly.